close to the half-time whistle. Here is Hassler. Oh, Hassler is through here, and he has the winger's pace to get there for the Ospreys.
Cudmore crashes ahead. Now they bring in Hassler, hitting and spinning. Hassler! Oh boy, what a try! Oh, Canada!
And welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. It's Jamie Gray coming to you from Rothesay, New Brunswick. And coming up today, if you might have guessed it from that little intro, we have the dynamic Jeff Hassler. Jeff spoke to us from his home out west and had a great conversation with you, one that you're not going to want to miss, one that you're going to really enjoy. He's a great conversationalist, and we had a really good conversation about his intro into rugby and his original dream of playing in the CFL, which is really cool. And he decided to go the rugby route, and he had a pretty good career with the Ospreys. As always, love hearing feedback. Got a lot of feedback over the last week since the last pod, when I mentioned I wanted to dust off the boots and get back out and wanted to gather some thoughts. And so today's Saturday while I'm recording this intro for Jeff, and Thursday night I actually get out to my first training in 17 years. There's about a dozen of us. I was clearly the oldest guy. There was a couple guys that were, close to my age that were doing the same as me, like they just want to get back into it. And it was really fun running the drills with the younger guys. And I can see what needs to be done, but my body just doesn't react as quickly as theirs. So that was interesting, but it was still fun nonetheless. I did a combination of running the drills as a coach in a sense, and then actually participating in the drills with social distancing, physical distancing. There wasn't any contact, so I think that's why I felt a little brave and got out there. But it was still a lot of fun, and we worked really hard, and we all had a good sweat on, and a few of us got to enjoy the social component afterwards, which was I think one of those things that I was probably missing more than being on the pitch. But it was really good. So keep that feedback coming. Anytime you have questions, direct them to me from Twitter at Canadian Ruck. We're on Instagram. That's where most of our photos are loaded. Highlighting the players that we've had on. That's _Canadian_Ruck. We have a Facebook group at the Canadian Ruck, and of course you can Gmail me at thecanadianruck@gmail.com. All right, I'm pretty quick at responding if you have a query. Make sure that when you're watching and listening that you're also following and subscribing. We're on YouTube, so all the videos are posted with me and my guests. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and CastBox for the listening aspect of it. And if you're struggling as to where to find anything, or you need to know what is happening, make sure that you're going to the CanadianRuck.weebly.com. That is our website. So there's links to everything there. It's got my favorite other rugby podcasts. It's got links to the Spotify individuals, the individual YouTube videos. Everything is there that you need. This week, our big shout is going out to Alex Clarkey. I think his loyalist buddies call him Sparky or Spanky. I don't know. Alex is one of my former players at Rothesay Netherwood. He's played also Team MBU 18 with me as well, but now he's playing for the Castaway Wanderers out in BC. And I just want to say thanks for the vote of confidence and kind of yelling at me. I say that in quotes to get back on the pitch, and that's what I did. So thanks, Clarkey, for stepping up and showing your thoughts and your wishes for me to get back on the pitch. In rugby news, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but my focus this week is kind of on something, basically a rugby wish list. Rugby Australia interviewed a bunch of their leading experts, or who they feel are their leading experts, on how to renovate the game they play in heaven, is the title of the article. And it's basically just laws to improve the game. So this is something I've been mentioning since COVID started. Rugby Brain Trust around the world, within Canada, like everywhere, needs to get together and come up with ways to make the game safer, tweak it a little bit so that it's better, it's more fairly played. And that's what some of these guys and girls in Australia did. So as I said, I stated this numerous times. New Zealand's already done some laws around the breakdown, which once players adapted, I think it's made for better rugby. It's made for safer rugby. Less players going offside at breakdowns, less people coming off their feet at breakdowns. Especially around those rucks, it was getting kind of crazy the last few years. So it's nice to see that they're tightening up those laws. But let's hear what some of those Australian experts have to say. We're going to start with Eddie Jones. Whether you like him or not, he's the current head coach of England. He had 3 interesting ones. First one, allows 6 replacements from a bench of 10. So instead of, international law and professional game, you have 7 replacements and that's it, or 8, sorry. He's saying you can use 6, but you can have a bench of 10. So you've got some a little bit more freedom as to who to choose, but you have to make better use of strategy. And he offers that it might be the difference between a tier 1 and tier 2, because tier 2 doesn't usually have the bench depth as a tier 1 nation might. So his argument is if if England's playing Canada, England can bring on 8 guys that are basically number 1 starters at almost anywhere else, where Canada might not have that luxury. If you drop that to only 6, it might make the game more fair when those subs start rolling in. And you'd also have to manage fatigue better that way, because you have to eliminate maybe all the front row coming out or things like that. You really have to be more strategic. So that's kind of an interesting thought. The other one I kind of liked is no penalty kicks at goal from scrums. I found this interesting, right? He offers that you only kick to touch or take a quick penalty. Too many reset scrums that take up too much time. Maybe from Eddie, this is coming from the fact that South Africa dominated England during the Rugby World Cup finals. Maybe it's still on his mind. Even saying that, I still think this is kind of a neat idea. And a couple other people kind of mentioned things around this as well, and we'll get to those too. And the third one from Eddie is only the tackler can use their hands in the ruck. So this is interesting. It might make it more simplistic for the referee to officiate. But he opines that it keeps more people on their feet at the breakdown, which makes sense. And doing that should make it safer. So if I'm the tackler, I'm the only one. I have to get to my feet and get that ball. If I can't, nobody else can reach in for that ball. I kind of like it. All right. Moving on, we got John Eales, who was the Wallabies World Cup winning captain in '99. All right. He suggests we get rid of that scrum penalty altogether. He says laws need to be adjusted for safety. If your scrum is that dominant, you should be able to use the ball quicker and more creatively instead of holding it in and just punishing the other team's scrum. And he's not sure why a team gets awarded a penalty because they have a stronger scrum. And a lot of nations might feel that John's got a really good statement because Canada has a pretty good scrum, but if you're going up against South Africa or New Zealand, do we weigh in that same category as them, right? He also wants to ban the rolling maul. I love this idea. I've been an advocate at high school rugby that rolling mauls shouldn't exist, and his arguments are, for me personally, I find it takes a lot of creativity out of the game. I find it's the only area in rugby where there's obstructions allowed to happen because the ball carrier could have 10 guys or 6 guys in front of them pushing forward. And I just find it's kind of counterintuitive to the way the rest of the match of rugby is played. Eales argues that it takes away from the contest of the ball. He argues that it's the only facet of the game where there's no contest for the ball, which is one of the main qualities of rugby over other sports. Right? You can have a contest at a scrum, at a line out, off a tackle, try and cause turnovers at rucks. Mauls, there's really not much of a contest. So that's an interesting one. I like that. Then we go to Bob Dwyer, who's the Wallabies winning head coach in '91. He's got a different idea with the rolling maul, and this is kind of neat. If the rolling maul is going to stay in, he suggests that the ball carrier has to be at the front of the maul, much like that way he's not offside. So it's an interesting idea to revamp it. It's the only aspect of the game where the ball carrier has blockers, he says. And he argues over the obstruction aspect. So there's a couple of neat ideas. Either ban them all or have the ball carrier at the front and then just have his teammates pushing them forward or her. Tightening up the offside line. Love this one. And this is what New Zealand Aotearoa is starting. Lots of players have been pushing up on D, going offside. And Dwyer says, if you're not onside, then you're offside. He said to him, it's very clear in his mind that if you're not onside, you are offside. And he says that refs often let too much go, especially around the pick and goes where defense is sneaking up and clearly not on hind foot. And he also suggests that you need to come down harder on cynical penalties. All right, so allow refs to use discretion over yellow cards. So if a player is breaking laws at the benefit of his team, they should be penalized accordingly. All right, I was watching the first half of the Crusaders and Chiefs match before I came in to do this, and one of the Chiefs got a yellow with about a minute left in the first 40, and it was a 2-on-1, and he charged forward, and he didn't intentionally slap the ball forward. He did scoop his hand back, but he made no attempt to catch it. And the commentators were saying, no, maybe it should be just a penalty because he didn't intentionally knock forward. But the ref said, no, I'm giving him a yellow. He clearly made no attempt to try and catch that ball. And I think that's one of those things. It's a professional foul, as they say, and the ref came down hard and gave him the 10 in the sin bin. And the other people they spoke with Shannon Perry, who's Olympic gold medalist and has 3 Rugby World Cups with Australia, Dan McKellar, who's the Brumbies head coach, and Carmichael Hunt, who's an ex-Wallaby. And I'm not going to get into detail on them, but they offered some interesting thoughts as well. They suggested that penalty kicks be worth 2 points, not 3. All right, so maybe teams would be less. I guess they would favor maybe going for a kick for posts or setting up a scrum as opposed to just doing a penalty kick if it's worth less points. Scrum have to use the ball quicker out of almost anywhere. Just move that ball a little bit quicker instead of holding it in. Somebody else said 1 point for drop goals and 2 points for penalty kick again. I'm not sure about the drop goal one. I love watching drop kicks. I think it adds just a different dimension to the game. I like the aspect of it that it's 3. And I love that New Zealand rugby this season with the R2 and how the point setup is. I love watching those drop kicks being taken more frequently than they have been in past. I enjoy watching that. Tighter advantage rule, again, reduce scrum reset opportunities, so not resetting scrums too many times. And then I like this one, limited amount of consecutive scrum attempts. Right, if it just continues to happen, give a half arm, what have you, but just move on from it altogether. So those are some interesting things, and that's going to lead us into the gray area. My gray area this week is kind of following up on that. Like, there's some really interesting things from some really bright rugby minds. It's an interesting article to read. You can Google it yourself. It's called "Renovating the Game They Play in Heaven. Rugby Experts Give Their Wish List." So what I want from you, the listeners, is I'm going to give you a few things that I would like to see. And mine's maybe high school level, but it's also club level, and it could be impact anywhere. But I want to hear from you, okay? Send me your top 2 or 3 law changes that you feel would make the game better and or safer. Put it out on social media, tweet me, put it on Instagram, go on Facebook, send me a Gmail, send me a voicemail. That would be cool. If you send me a voice clip via email or something, I'll make sure it gets on the pod. And if you send me some interesting ideas, I'll do my best to make sure that they all get popped up over the next pod or 2. But a few things I'd like to see laws around the breakdown, kind of what is happening in New Zealand lately. I'd like to see those get changed and get those fixed. Right? I'm not a fan of seeing players diving into rucks and rolling around. It's not safe. It's not clean rugby. It's injuries waiting to happen. It's a messy. It doesn't look good on television, which isn't, I guess, the purpose. But if you're trying to get new spectators, or you're trying to get more kids involved and parents are seeing that, they're going to say that looks too hazardous. Have those rucks cleaned up, people on their feet, be safer, make it stricter around those offside lines about staying on your feet as well. Rolling mauls, as I said, I'm not a fan. I understand the value, but I am not a fan. Maybe you got to place a full time limit on them. All right, so maybe if they're going to stay in, maybe it's like a 5-second limit or a 10-second limit. I know the ref gives the count, like you have 3 attempts to get it out once that maul stops, but maybe it's a time limit. Maybe the ref has to count out loud, the old 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, things like that. So if it's a 5-meter line out, the opposition, or sorry, the offensive, the challenging team gets to try and hold that up for 5 or 7 seconds, and if they do, they win the ball. And if not, the team with the ball, they have 5-7 seconds maybe to get it across the line, put it down for a try, or move the ball out. But I think that might be a way to alleviate some of those maul issues. And I did like this one. I thought this was really interesting. No penalty kicks from penalties on scrums. I really like the Eddie Jones one. Interesting for lots of reasons. Safety of the pack. Too many scrums are getting reset. You take away the penalties from it. Maybe there's less pressure on those scrums. It speeds up the game for sure. And I like the thought of what one of the guys said, teams unfairly penalized for having a lesser scrum. And I've got unfairly italicized because if you're playing international rugby, scrums are all really strong. But look how strong South Africa's scrum was at the World Cup and how they just decimated teams. And should those other teams get penalized because they're not as strong in the scrum area? I don't know. That's an interesting idea to think about. So again, send in your thoughts. Again, tweet me, Gmail me, Facebook me, Instagram me, send a voice clip. Talk to me about what you would like to see changed, or if you thought my thoughts on the rolling maul, laws around the breakdown, no PKs on scrums, maybe you think that's just asinine, then let me know. But send in some thoughts. Let's get them on the air. Let's generate some traffic and get more people listening and responding. So that's the gray area for this pod. But coming up now was a great guest. I love this picture. If you're watching YouTube, I love this picture of Jeff diving across the line. And just, you can tell by the look on his face, he's just enjoying the rugby. So Jeff has well over 30 caps with Canada. I felt like more, but that was it. And he has over 50 points with Canada. He's a member of the Rugby World Cup in 2015 and again last year in Japan. Very powerful and thrilling winger. A lot of speed, a lot of strength. His aspirations in life when he was in university and high school was to play in the CFL, and he just loves the contact aspect of football and of rugby, and that showed through in his gameplay. I played a number of seasons with the Ospreys, over 90 matches, and he just finished up with Seattle of MLR. A couple of things that I found out, which I thought was pretty cool, and the first one he didn't even know, but after the Rugby World Cup in 2019, they did a top 15 of the teams that didn't make it out of the group stages, and Jeff actually was the sole Canadian that made it onto that list as one of the top 15 players that didn't advance through. And the other one, which was kind of funny when we talk about this, was Jeff was voted the 11th hottest rugby player in the world. Not my cup of tea, but I imagine he's somebody's cup of tea. And if he's voted 11th hottest in the world, I guess we'll have to take that at face value. So congrats, Jeff. That is a pretty cool compliment. anyway, so stay tuned. Jeff's coming up, and we have some fun with Jeff, and then we'll sign off. So sit back, crack a beer, and enjoy the conversation with Jeff Hassler.
All right, welcome back to the Canadian Ruck. This is Jamie, and we're lucky today. We have Jeff Hassler, a dominant player for Team Canada over the years, played in a couple of World Cups, played with Ospreys overseas, played a little with Seattle in Major League Rugby. And Jeff, thank you very much for appearing on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully have a bit of fun today.
Awesome, me too. All right, so let's jump right in. So you were born in Alberta. Talk to us how you became involved in the game, high school level, university, et cetera. Like, what was your stepping stone to the national program?
So back in Alberta, going through kind of, I guess it would be junior high, American football was my big sport. Being a prairie boy, that was kind of the thing you did back then. And I'd been playing all the way through from Pee Wee through high school. And we had a British gym teacher at my school, actually. His name's Joe Buck. And he was an English guy who was mad about rugby and saw kind of this group of athletes we had a year older than me, and then particularly my age. And all of us were, a large group of us were pretty successful football players going on to collegiate level afterwards and stuff. And he kind of saw that and said, well, do you guys want to play some rugby in the off season? And all of us said, what's rugby? And he goes, oh, it's fine. You don't have to, the rules are easy. All you got to do is this, and you can run and hit people without pads. And all of us were like, all right, sign me up. And I think I played the first 2 seasons not knowing what a penalty was. So when when the ref put his hand up to back away. So it took a little bit of getting used to, but man, I loved it straight away. And playing in the off seasons of high school football and stuff was great, and then kind of continued on through age grade stuff while I was still playing football.
So did you have aspirations to play like university football or CFL or anything like that? Or did that kind of go by the wayside once you started, getting better at rugby?
No, I actually went to the University of Saskatchewan to play for the Huskies football.
Nice.
I did that for 2 seasons, and then in the off season, I stayed out in Saskatoon. Actually, I didn't go home to Alberta, and I joined up with the Saskatoon teams there. And actually, Hubert Bidens and I crossed paths a few times out there, and it's quite fun. Just a short little season, but that's what I did in the off seasons, and then eventually did kind of get picked up by the I guess U20 program. I'd already done U17 Canada coming out of high school, and then actually kind of fell through the slipstreams and kind of thought that was the end of the Canada stuff for me. I was more focused on football at the time, with CFL actually being the goal. And then, I kind of came back into the works after the 2011 World Cup. Guys kind of retired, and got the call from Rugby Canada to come out to Victoria if I wanted to join the Sevens karting program. And at that time, I guess might have been the professionalism of football at that time, watching film for 3 or 4 hours a day, that kind of steered me away from it, actually. And the personalities and camaraderie of rugby, even at the Saskatoon club level, that really drew me back to rugby. And I ended up transferring to UVic and moving out to Victoria 2 years into my football stint. So that was the end of the football dream for me, but it worked out well, and I'm still pretty happy with my decision.
That's pretty cool that you're playing university football and your coaches are fine with you playing rugby in the off season. Like, nowadays that doesn't happen. Usually, or by that smile, I'm going to say they didn't know, right?
They weren't fine with it. And actually, I think that got me into a bit of trouble. I was playing for kind of a rep team, U20, down in Regina, and dislocated my shoulder in between my first and second season of football. Thought I could rehab it back, and then like game 2 of my second season with the Huskies, it just was coming out like every other play, so I had to get surgery, and that was kind of the end of that season for me. So I mean, my football career didn't end quite the way I wanted it to, but I mean, again, it kind of pushed me in the direction I ended up going, and it was a great result in the end.
So saying that, like, just a little not off topic, but I guess following up with what you're saying, you were playing football, you were playing rugby. I've always been an advocate of, kids and everybody being multi-sport as opposed to just being centralized in one sport. I'm going to assume that's something that you would agree with because you played football and rugby at the same time. What are your thoughts there on, I guess, coaches or programs that insist that you only do their sport and nothing else?
I guess I can see things changing now, sports getting more streamlined, more professional. So of course these guys, if you're the best athlete, they want you focusing on that all the time in your particular sport. But yeah, for me, I was going from football season to basketball, tried wrestling just to get one of the top wrestlers to join the football team, doing all sorts, did track and field and badminton and then rugby. That was kind of my yearly thing, and I loved it. It just always kept me fresh, ready for the next season, wanting to jump into it. And then whenever that next sport did come around, you kind of chuck yourself fully into it, and then you pick up so many different skills from it. I won't get too far ahead, but that's kind of one of the reasons why I think Canadian rugby players do so well. And then being overseas where you're surrounded by strictly rugby players, there is a difference in kind of us going over there, but I can touch on that a little bit later. But I 100% think that being a cross dual sport athlete is a huge benefit, as long as you can kind of wrap your head around the nuances of each game.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I want to hear about your adventure overseas, but before we get there, let's talk about the World Cups. You played in 2015 in England and 2019 in Japan. Can you walk us through those experiences? Like they must have been different. Like, England's the birthplace of rugby. Japan's an up-and-coming nation with, some of the most gracious people on earth. What was it like going in as, a rookie to the World Cup experience to 2015 to that veteran experience in 2019?
Yeah, they were vastly different tournaments from a player perspective, and I imagine from the fans as well. But the 2015 World Cup was interesting because our pre-World Cup camp was in Swansea, where I was living. So we were staying at the Marriott Hotel 2 blocks or 2-minute drive from my house that I'd been living at for years, right? So that was kind of interesting to show the guys around where I'd been. I had my car there, so when we had time off, we could go around to the beach and stuff like that. And then also having that fan support of all the Ospreys fans that were out there, which was really cool. And then having the first game at Millennium Stadium against Ireland was pretty cool, because there were quite a few people supporting us that weren't Canadian fans per se, but were, by association. And it was cool. It was a crazy experience. You know, the fans in the UK, you know, you're more or less getting into being right downtown Cardiff. All of the bars, there's 150,000 people there with 80,000 packed into the stadium. So that first game was real cool. Driving to the stadium with just a mob of people banging on the bus, and you know, it was a 2-minute drive that took us 25 minutes just to clear all the fans out of the way. Personally, for me, I played half of the first game, and then the last game against Romania, I had a calf strain and carrying some other kind of injuries. So just trying to battle through it. But being alongside all of those guys and having my first experience at a World Cup, it was pretty awesome. And still to this day, I think that Romanian try I had in the last game was still a career highlight try for me. So those are things that I'll always remember. And then going into this World Cup, I was super, super excited because, you know, my rugby career had taken me in a few different directions, and getting back into the fold with Rugby Canada and going to Japan, which I knew would be a phenomenal cultural experience, and just how mad they are about rugby. I knew it was going to be a totally different thing to the UK. So I was really excited for that. And honestly, the experience for me was way better than the 2015. I think I was old enough to really appreciate what was happening there. The fan support, the people, the culture. Again, when we did our pre-camp in Natigo, and just the stuff that we got to do there was really, really great. And overall, I thought my 2019 experience was more enjoyable, even having that last game canceled.
Yes, speaking of that, I was chatting with a couple of guys from the Super Rugby podcast, and they said, I mean, as Canadians, we know this, but they said when they saw Canada and Namibia game canceled because of the weather, and watching the Canadians do cleanup and service work, they and other countries around the world, like rugby nations that would be following, just got this different level of respect for what you guys did in that atmosphere. You could have sulked and walked away and didn't care, but instead you rolled up your sleeves and helped those in the community. Can you talk to us about those service endeavors that you guys participated in?
Yeah, so guys were going down and basically just doing cleanup. There's some houses that were, you know, underwater and debris everywhere, and you know, older folks, you couldn't communicate with them or anything, but you know, you can see just the joy in their faces, and just going and doing cleanup for the day. And I think there was a lot of kind of global publicity from it, and people trying to get a hold and asking what the experience was like. But I think, yeah, just a very Canadian thing to do at the end of the day. And people were like, oh yeah, there it is, the Canadians doing that kind of thing again, you know?
That's pretty cool. It was pretty neat to see. On a personal note though, World Rugby Magazine selected you as in the top 15 who didn't make the World Cup quarterfinals. I think you're the only Canadian. I think you're the only North American that made that roster. I'd have to double check. What does that mean to you? I mean, that's a huge compliment. And in all fairness, you guys played really well. You're up against some tough squads. But what does it mean to you personally by getting that acknowledgement from the World Rugby Magazine?
To be honest, I didn't even know about that until you had brought it to my attention. So down
it's
the line,
great.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that now and hearing about it, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's humbling. I went and looked at the list, and I'm among some pretty outstanding players there. So it's pretty special for me. But yeah, I don't know. I obviously came back hoping to have a good campaign. Didn't even know if I'd get myself into the squad. So to be able to go through and stay injury free and to put a performance that I was pretty proud of was pretty good. And to get that kind of global recognition is nice. Oftentimes the Canadian guys just don't get that. Even if you're on par with someone else or whatever, it's just for the sake of where we are and where our nation is in the global rankings, we don't really usually get that. So for me to be among some of those other players in some of those other countries that are on the main stage it was nice to see.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. We typically don't get that recognition that other countries get. So it was great to see your name up there. You alluded to this earlier, but you played a number of times with the Ospreys out of Wales. Walk us through that experience playing professionally in Europe. What was that atmosphere? Because I think you played with, Alan Jones, George North, Justin Tipperick, some of those guys.
Yeah. It's funny to look back on. I mean, I was pretty green in the rugby world. I had done, the odd U17 tour, U20 tour, but I had played little to no competitive rugby outside of those big games, and mostly had focused on football. But then I got onto the circuit, the 7th Circuit, and that was kind of my first experience of high-level rugby. And then going over there, I remember signing the contract. I think I was still 20 years old. And basically they said, you've got 2 weeks to move out here. And I sold everything I had and went over with 2 duffel bags. And I remember getting there and I didn't even know who I was talking to. I didn't know it was the head coach. I didn't know some of the players on the team. So I'm walking in and realizing that, I've got 5 guys on my squad that are just coming off the Lions tour. Again, like Alan Wynne-Jones. I had Adam Jones, Ian Evans, Justin Tipperick. Yeah. So, kind of funny now because I'll go talk to them again. I've known them for years now. And I'm like, guys, I didn't even know who you were. Like I had no idea I was walking into rugby greatness, right? Just mocking them a little bit, but, it was good. I think just getting into that environment and being full-time and seeing the level that they train at was a huge thing. And the, professionalism that they really instill like day to day. Guys aren't complacent there at all. The work ethics there. And my learning curve just went through the roof, just absorbing as much as I possibly could. I had the physical attributes that kind of came from football and stuff, but it was learning the nuances of being a wing. And, sometimes a lot of the time you're not going to have the ball. You might get 8 to 10 carries a game on a good day. What are you doing for the rest of the 80 minutes? And trying to learn from, the likes of Richard Fussell at 15, just be like, I need you in this position. And, not necessarily what you do with the ball, but it's more important what you do without it. Otherwise they're punting it over your head and your forwards are getting pissed off when they're marching 50 meters backwards. Right. So a lot of things like that, I really had to learn quickly.
And you don't want to piss off the Jones boys or Justin or anybody, those guys like that.
No, and I mean, I don't know if you've watched much of the Welsh rugby, but Dan Bigger's not afraid to rip into somebody. So, like,
yeah,
when you're playing alongside him, you got to kind of have thick skin too, because he's not doing it to be a dick. He just wants to win, So you gotta take it and own it and be like, yeah, I screwed up and learn from it quick. And luckily, I was able to do that. Had a few injuries within the squad that first season and was able to kind of stick in straight away and make an impact and start off a pretty good career over there.
That's great. So you played over there then, but you also played in those World Cups. What did you take from those guys or from training that would help you with the national team? Like, was it just the day-to-day, like almost business attitude, or did you pick up any tips and tricks of the trade?
I think it's just the difference was we were able to train every day with the Ospreys, but then you come back into the Canada environment and you've got more or less 10 days to prepare for a game versus Ireland, where these guys are together all the time. So our training sessions tend to be a little bit longer with Canada because you've got to get guys together from all over the world. And then when that kind of happens, it's easier to lose focus and to not be as flat out in what you're doing. But what you always try to bring back to the Canada stuff is just that intensity, the speed, everything that you're doing is purposeful training. It's not like standing around trying to talk things through. It's use the time that you have and to do it as flat out as you can. Because if you're not doing that in the pro environments, they'll just kick you off the pitch. They'll just say, get out. Like, you're not, as soon as you get on this pitch, whether it's 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, like, you got to be switched in and do your job, and no one else is going to do it for you. So to try and bring those things back. And it's interesting too, when you get, guys coming from different clubs like DTH at Glasgow, those are the same things that, different players, different coaches and stuff. But when he comes back in, it's like, this is the way you got to train. Like this, we gotta up our level of intensity if we want to hang in there with some of the top tier nations. So
yeah. Dialed in and be invested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you've also played a little with Seattle Major League Rugby. Talk to us about that experience in North America. I know it's a new league. It could have a great and a huge impact on Rugby Canada and Rugby USA. talk to us about what your thoughts are of the MLR and what it can do to improve our national side.
Yeah, I mean, the first looks of rugby in North America with the previous league that folded was exciting, just to think of what it could be. I think everybody in the world's thinking that, because they see what North American sport is, and the big four. It's like, well, could rugby be the next MLS? And you see how well that's branded now, and the caliber of players that's bringing over. And I think we're starting to see that now with the MLR. You get these big name signings coming from all over the place. Whether people keep saying, oh, they're in their twilight years or not, it doesn't matter. It's raising the profile of the game. And those guys can still play. Like, don't get me wrong. It doesn't matter if they're 32, 33. I mean, they're not over the hump yet. And they'll school some of the guys in this league. So I think it's great. Like I said, we don't get the world recognition. And even if you're a fantastic player, teams just don't have the foreign space on their rosters and stuff for guys to come over. They're not going to take you when they can take someone from Super Rugby or whatever, right? So this gives guys an avenue to really showcase themselves, learn, be in an environment that they can play and train all the time, and do it closer to home. And it's only gonna make rugby in North America better. And I think the league is really starting to grow and pick up some momentum, and it's exciting to see where it could go.
Yeah, I agree. I read, as you're speaking of some of these guys, I had the Beast on previous pod with Doug Frazier, and it was great talking with him and what his thoughts are with the Old Glory. And I read an article online the other day that DTH is contemplating coming over next season. So that'll be pretty cool to watch him over in North America. So maybe he'll sign up for Hawaii or something like that. That would be fun.
I saw that like 2 days ago, and I just said, wow, that would be an awesome experience to go into Hawaii.
Yeah, I texted Cole Keith. I said, hey, do you need somebody to come along with you on that Hawaii trip? And he goes, I'm just hoping it's an away game for us next year. So
that's true. If they're in the other conference, they might get the home game against them.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at the spot now, Jeff, where it's the quick fire. So I got about 20 questions. You're not it's not really designed to make you think a lot, but just something to have a little fun. So give our listeners, our viewers, a chance to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
About half of them are rugby based, and the other half are kind of like just you as a person. Okay.
Sweet.
All right. Question 1: best team you've ever faced?
On a club level, definitely Leinster. Every time I played them, it was crazy going to the RDS and playing there in front of their fans. It was a proper rugby experience, and didn't matter if it was their number one team. I played them in Heineken Cup, and I played them during international windows, during Six Nations, and they're good all the time. They're skilled. They're tough, and it was fun. I really enjoyed playing Leinster. And then internationally, I guess it would be anything. Well, All Blacks were pretty tough. Springboks were pretty tough. Those were always going to be tough games for us, but the experience of getting to line up in a World Cup against them is pretty unique. But yeah, club level, definitely Leinster.
Good. Best player you've ever faced?
I guess, would it be like a one-on-one matchup, like a opponent on the wing, or just?
That's the next question.
Okay, that's the next one. Best player I've ever played against. Wow. Well, I mean, it's cliche as it sounds, but if you go watch the footage from the All Blacks game, I'm pretty sure Sonny Bill Williams went around me twice without being touched. So, I mean, he's pretty good. But club level, I think one guy that I actually really enjoyed playing against, and we had a little bit of banter, with Simon Zebo from Munster. I really enjoyed playing against him. He was real good. He popped up when he needed to. He's had a great career with Ireland, and now I think he's down at Racing Metro. But I liked watching the way he played, and playing against him was quite fun.
Cool. All right, so the next one, toughest player ever faced. And typically what I say is what you were alluding to. The opposition has the ball. It's a 1v1, and it's somebody that you think, oh, God, I got to stick my head in there and try and tackle this guy.
Well, I mean, yeah, Sunnyvale was tough. That was a tough ask. But I think in the context of even playing field in like a well-matched game, the guy that I hated playing against was Charles Piatow. I just remember having a few defensive midfield scrums, and I was playing on the right wing. They'd stick him at first receiver on the short side. And it was like, you had no idea if he's going to give you a fend, if he's going to bump you straight over, or if he's going to goose step you or offload or whatever. Anytime I was in that position, I'm like, okay, just go at him as hard as you can to take away the space, chop him down, and just hope he doesn't get the ball off, because he honestly he's probably one of the most well-rounded attacking threats I've seen. And obviously he's had a pretty outstanding career, and yeah, it goes to show what he's done. But he was the worst to go against. I hated it.
Yeah, it makes a difference if you know you're going to get run over. At least you can try and hang on. But if you don't know what he's going to do,
yeah, you don't know. And then he kind of goes in for that bump look, and then you plant, and the next thing you know, he just scoots straight sideways, and you're like, what the hell? To have that much power and that much side-to-side agility was just unbelievable to watch, and it was fun to play against. Kept you on your toes.
Kind of hoping the camera's not on you at that time, though.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, 7s or 15s?
Man, 15s, 100%. I mean, I did the 7th circuit for 2 years in 2012 and 2013, and I actually think to this day I still haven't completed a full 7s game. Like, I don't think I have the gas to play 14 minutes straight. Like, those guys are pretty amazing specimens, but my throttle runs pretty hard and fast, and it dies out quick. So I chose the 15s. I like the contact too much. You know, I left the fancy feet once I left the 7s, and just kind of enjoyed the process of 15s and the collisions of it.
That's fair. Best match you were ever a part of?
Ooh.
I'd almost say the second half of the South Africa in 2019 World Cup, but
yeah, that was amazing the way we played there and went down. I guess you'd always kind of want to pick one that we won, but for Canada, there's not a whole lot of them for me, unfortunately.
some try years.
Yeah, I think had a pretty awesome experience with Ospreys in the Heineken Cup against Northampton. I think we piled on about 50 points, and I had a brace myself. 2 of my buddies played really good rugby, and it was just actually a really, really fun game to be a part of. And then also I go back all the way to, I think it was my first start for Canada in 2013, possibly November 2013, in Wales, actually, in Colwyn Bay. We played Russia, my first start there. And yeah, we had a pretty good game and won that test match. A couple of good buddies of mine had their first caps as well. So it was just a pretty exciting time for me, getting into the Canada fold, having a good game and getting the win.
It's nice. Weird though. It's a little odd that you're playing your first test and it's not at home, or it's not at the opposition's field. You're at a neutral country.
Yeah, we did that for a bit. I think we played Samoa there as well. Like, I've played a few test matches in Colwyn Bay, and for whatever reason, I think in that window, teams are coming from all over Europe, and it's a midway point. Luckily, in the summer, we would always play our home games, but the November ones were always kind of France or Colwyn Bay or something weird like that.
Yeah. All right. Favorite rugby tradition?
Man, I genuinely love the fact that you go and have a beer with the opposition and your teammates after a game. That was one of the main reasons I switched sports, was because of that kind of camaraderie and the no ego factor of it. You know, being in a locker room with 90 guys on a football team, it's almost like you have 2 teams within one, the offense, the defense. Guys are all hoorah. And that wasn't me. I love the fact that after a game you go, and I remember one guy coming up and saying, "Oh, we played the same position today," and bought me a pint. And I was like, that's why you're buying me a pint? I was like, that's unbelievable. I love you. So it was that. It was having that after the game, and it still happens. I mean, the MLR is great. There's boat races after the games. And, you know, you just get to sit down and get to know the guys you're playing, and you never know when you're going to cross paths with them again. So it's, I love that as a tradition.
Yeah, it's a great community atmosphere for sure. Best team you've played with?
I mean, it would probably have to be that Ospreys team when you've got that many internationals and British Lions and stuff on it. I think at one point we had 13 of the 15 starters for the Welsh team were on the Ospreys. So, you know, just on statistics alone, they were probably the top guys. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Your nickname?
I've had a few. Most guys now just call me Hass, Hassler, Hass. But back in the sevens days, I think I was weighing like 98 kilos. I was a bit of a gym rat, carrying a bit of extra weight around, and they called me Fat Speed. I was so deceptively fast with like just a big old body on me. So for a smaller kind of winger type guy, they're like, it doesn't make sense how you move so quick. It's just funny. So yeah, they call me Fat Speed. But so that since then that nickname's faded, and it's just turned into more of Hass.
Fat Speed's a good one though. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Best nickname that you've heard through rugby?
There's a guy I play with at Seattle, Tim Metch, and he kind of just wanted his own nickname. But when in rugby, typically if you try to create a nickname, you're never going to get it. But just like typical Australian bogan guy, just he kept calling people Mad Dog. And he'd be like, Mad Dog, you Mad Dog. And then for whatever reason now he's Mad Dog, and it fits him absolutely perfectly. But it's just hilarious that he pushed it on us so hard. And normally you never get it to stick, but that one stuck. And that one's a pretty funny one because he is a bit of a mad dog, that guy.
You guys cave there. All right. All right. Any rugby superstitions?
I don't have many superstitions, to be honest. I don't do anything particularly the same every game. I think I'll take 2 or 3 high balls a game, no more than that, in warm-up. And whether I catch them or not, I'm done. I think mentally I just want to get my foot patterns, and then if I don't let it discourage me. But I'll always make sure I get 2 or 3 because you just never know when they're going to bomb some up on you. But other than that, superstitions, don't listen to the same music, don't eat the same meals. No, more or less nothing there. So can't give you any juicy stuff for that.
No problem. All right. Have you watched the Last Dance documentary about Jordan, Michael Jordan?
Yeah, I did.
All right. Who was of players you played with? Who was the Jordan? Who was the Pippen, and who was the Rodman?
Ooh, that's a good question. The Jordan would be Dan Bigger for sure. As I kind of alluded to before, he demands excellence in all kind of aspects of the game, especially personally. I've seen him out there kicking for 3 hours in torrential downpour, and he'll do that most days. You know, he's just very, very intrinsically motivated and works extremely hard, and demands that from his teammates as well. Kind of like you see with Jordan, kind of snapping at guys or challenging them, getting them to rise up and that kind of thing. And being a teammate of his, it was pretty cool because, either sink or swim, right? And I think I did well to earn the respect of most of those guys, and including him, which was cool. The Scottie Pippen, the ultimate kind of number 2 wingman. Hey, is that what we're going with?
Yeah.
I would actually, I'd say Justin Tipperick, because he is without a doubt, I think he's the best player I've ever played with. Skill-wise, mentally, his knowledge of the game, to me is an amazing player, but extremely, extremely underrated. A little bit more or a little bit less so now that Warburton's retired and he's kind of stepped into that. But I mean, he's had 2 Lions tours. He's, a mainstay kind of guy on the Welsh squad, and he's unbelievable. He could slot in at 12 or 13 in an international game. And I have no doubts he would hold his own there. He can kick better than I can kick. And yeah, just, you know, a very soft-spoken, humble guy that flies under the radar quite a bit.
Good pick.
And then the Rodman, the grinder.
Yeah.
Oh, I've played with a few grinders, but I guess I'll with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, I'd say Jeb Sinclair. I'll throw a Canadian boy into that mix, and I love Jeb. He's been a good buddy of mine for years, and he's got that bit of grittiness to him, you know, and expects guys to do the same. Made a career out of fighting in the trenches and, you know, beating the crap out of his body. I think he's still paying for it now. So he's just got that mentality too. He's just gonna work, and if you don't like it, you don't like me. It's your problem, not mine. So I give him a punch for that one.
I think if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure you're the second person that chose Jeb as the Rodman. He's been on twice with us as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I gather he's quite the talker too.
Yeah, he could go on for days, especially about himself.
Yeah. All right. If you had the choice, any three people alive or dead, you could take golfing.
Golfing, ooh. Well, I'd love to go with Tiger. That would be pretty cool. After that, I would love to have met or golfed with Walter Payton in Chicago, running back.
Yeah.
He was kind of child inspiration for me, growing up being a tailback myself. I actually can specifically remember one day I was reading his book, and it talked about him, you know, wherever he grew up down in the South, just feeling like he really wanted to run over this guy. That was a linebacker. And one day he said, I'm just going to go as hard as I can and see what happens. And sure enough, he went straight over top of him. And he's like, I've never felt a better feeling. And if you go watch any Walter Payton clips, it's like guys just can't bring the dude down.
Yeah.
And I remember doing the same thing after I finished his book. I think I was 12 years old. And I said, well, instead of running around people, I'm going to go see if I can go through them. And I had the exact same feeling. And I said, this is fantastic. So I've kind of mimicked my game after that now, and it's transferred into rugby as well. But I think it would be pretty awesome to have him along, plus all the foundation work he did before he passed away and stuff. Pretty unique person. And then lastly, wow, I had no time to think of this one. Hey. I think it'd be cool to golf with not necessarily an athlete, but someone who's done something quite unique. Like, I'm not a specific person in general, but I followed a lot of the space stuff that's happened in the past, and I'd love to meet an astronaut that's done a couple spacewalks and just ask him about that experience. Not anyone in particular, but I just would love to hear about going up and doing something that not really any people in the world ever get the chance to do.
That'd be an interesting foursome to go golfing. Be fun to watch.
Yeah, very, very interesting foursome.
All right. Chips or cookies?
Chips.
What kind?
Like sea salt and vinegar, Miss Vicky's, or what do we got? What are those sweet chili heat Doritos? Those are pretty good.
Two good brands.
Yeah.
Fries or onion rings?
I like an onion ring if they're from a good burger shack or something. Then you can't go wrong with a real nice onion ring.
That's true. Favorite beer?
I drank quite a bit of Belgian beer when I was over in the UK, and they've got like a bunch of, well, it's like the beer capital of the world, man. So if you get over there, you got to try it out.
Not the Belgian beer they sell in New Brunswick, then.
No. So yeah, there's one. Well, I mean, they got the Blue Moon and stuff. That's kind of a spin-off of it, but Left Bay was one of my favorites. Just a blonde ale. I'm not really into when I was down in Seattle, there's a huge kind of IPA craze right now, and the craft beer and stuff, and not for me. Too much IPAs hanging around for my liking.
All right, what's a guilty pleasure?
Whoa. I don't know. I like to crush some ice cream with Reese's peanut butter cups in it. That's for sure. I'm not afraid of a late night blizzard.
I don't think anybody is.
And yeah, I often tell myself I should probably cut down on it, but if I'm staying active enough, I feel like I can justify it every now and again. But
Moderation.
Everything in moderation. Yeah.
That's great. Best place for a post-match beer?
Ooh.
I feel like you're a dressing room guy because you already talked about the camaraderie of sharing a beer with your opposite number and stuff like that, but maybe there's a pub or something like that too.
I'm trying to think. There's not any I'm trying to think if there was one spot somewhere in the world that I did have a real good post-match beer, but there's not really any one particular place that's standing out. But one of the best parts is if there's a case of beer already in the change room and you're stripping your kit off and you go around, and especially after a win, everyone's in great spirits and just going around and giving a cheers to each of the guys. And then even if you funnel into a change room with the other team, honestly, pretty cool. Tyler Ardron, obviously being with the Chiefs, knew a lot of the All Blacks guys, and we were in their change room for an hour after the game, just chatting with them and, talking to some guys that had mutual connections from players that I've played with or against and stuff. And to hear the stories of the guys I know from the All Blacks perspective is pretty interesting. Yeah, no, there's not one particular spot that really stands out to me. I think it's just the idea of it and being able to celebrate those small things after every test, because there's a lot that goes into each one.
Yeah, it's true. Tyler's been on twice. He's a great guest. He brought Sam Kane and Lachlan Bozier on him once with him, and it was I chatted with him, and then 2 days later, Sam's announced as the captain of the All Blacks. I'm like, that's awesome. It was pretty cool. So.
Yeah, I think those two were living together for a bit there, so they've got to know each other quite well, which is pretty cool. Heard a lot of good things from Sam. Yeah,
and Tyler's over in France now, I guess, doing his 14-day quarantine or whatever before he signs up or suits up with Castra in France, I guess.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him play. We actually played Cast in a European game down there. And pretty cool environment. They're rugby mad, smaller town. I mean, obviously Taylor Paris being there for a while too, he's told us a lot about it. But I think Ty will be pretty successful there and have a good little stint.
Yeah, I think he's excited. Is Taylor? He's still in France, isn't he? Paris?
Yeah, he's gone and signed up with Oyonnax now, I believe.
Are they in the same division or same league? I don't know much about the France league.
Yeah, so they're Pro D2, so one level down, and over kind of towards Geneva. So he's up in the mountains now, and
okay,
looks like a pretty beautiful place. So we'll see how he goes there.
Nice. All right, what series are you binge watching right now?
I'm trying to watch Ozark at the moment. Not much of it. Yeah, I mean, I piecemeal it. I binging it. Don't binge too much. But I've gotten into that. I think it's quite interesting at the moment. But actually, what I've kind of thrown myself into is this Formula One. Never really been a race car kind of guy, but it's one of the only sports back up. And I think there's a Formula 1 2 series thing on Netflix. And if you watch that, I'm a firm believer you'll become a Formula 1 fan. It's pretty intense and pretty cool. So it's called Drive to Survive on Netflix, and I crushed that out a couple weeks ago.
Drive to Survive?
Yeah.
I'll look that up.
Yeah, it's very cool.
What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie? It's a split between Braveheart and Good Will Hunting.
Good choices.
Yeah.
Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life?
That's a question that's been answered by Tyler when we were at Ospreys. Like one of those, because we were just the pair of Canadians, right? So everyone just associated us as one. So we did one of those like couples answering things. And he answered it, and I think he said, I don't actually really want to repeat this. He said Charlie Sheen, but I would say no to that. I would like
Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, I would say more of like a Brad Pitt from Troy. You know what I mean? Or the dude that plays Thor. That's what I'm thinking.
Aim high, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. All right. Who would be the leading lady?
Who would I like to cast as my lead lady?
Sure. Who's going to be playing opposite of you?
It's got to be what?
Who's playing opposite of you? Can be anybody.
I mean, I would love Natalie Portman to do it.
There you go. She was in the Thor movies.
Exactly. I feel like, well, yeah, we would have a lot of chemistry. It would work well.
I think so. I'll send her a tweet there and see what we can make happen for that.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Last quick fire. Who had the biggest impact on you as a player?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it would be unfair to certain people to just name one. I think we're kind of a product of the steps that were taken, and it's interesting if you go back into your career 10, 15 years ago or whenever you started to see each individual thing, how that one person kind of got you to where you are and then the next person helped you. But I mean, if it weren't for Joe Buck, that I would never know what rugby was. It wouldn't have started me down this path. I think another huge one that was involved with Rugby Canada was Mike Shelley. He was my under-20s coach. He was the Wolfpack guy that kind of was the one that resurged my rugby career with the U20s, because I'd kind of fallen off the Rugby Canada radar being in the prairies and playing football. So he got me back in and was the first one to actually mention even playing professionally overseas. And then I guess Kieran Crowley was a huge one, getting my first initial stuff with Canada, backing me as a young guy, giving me a lot of confidence. And then later down the road with my professional career overseas was Steve Tandy, the Ospreys coach. I mean, he was there for a while. Things ended up not going quite to plan for him. I mean, he's the Scotland defense coach now, so he's done something right. But just seeing the way he allowed myself and Tyler to really grow as players at Ospreys and learn and kind of nurture a relationship was really, really nice, because it's easy for guys to come over and you don't know as much, you're not as experienced, to just put you on the back burner and say, all right, you're here and you can cover us if we need you. But to allow us to try and push for starting positions and things like that, and to do those types of things has been pretty great. So again, I can't really name it down to one person. There's a lot that have had an impact, but I'd say if you look at the major things that have happened, those four people have played pretty big roles throughout my career.
I think that's a perfectly great answer, talking about everybody that's helped you in those different stepping stones on your career. All right, so we only got a handful of questions left, not even. So back in 2018, you kind of stepped out of pro rugby for a bit. You're only 26. Talk to us about that decision to kind of remove yourself for a little bit and do what you did.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really spoke to anyone about this type, what kind of transpired, I suppose. I had media kind of all over the UK trying to get in touch and stuff, but at that point I kind of wanted to just disengage from it and be real solid with my decision making and not have anyone kind of meddle in that. But yeah, I kind of can walk you through that a bit. I was at Ospreys from 2013 to 2018, and I had actually another year on my contract there. It was a +1 year. But at that point, I'd made the decision that I didn't want to stay in Wales anymore for personal reasons. I just, I loved it there. I would never change it, but I was ready to try something else. And at that point, the plan was to go play for a different club. I was still thinking rugby. But in my contract, I had to write on paper that I would be terminating that final year by November. So really the season had only happened for a month and a half. So at that point, teams aren't doing their recruitment per se from other clubs. They're kind of more looking internally and doing signings. So I remember sitting across from Steve Tandy and handing him this and giving him my notice, and he just didn't even understand it was a blind side to him. We had a pretty great relationship. But I just explained to him my reasoning. I said, you know, I've done a good stint here. 5 years for a foreign player at one club is pretty good. I've enjoyed my experience, but I'm ready to experience something else, whether it's different city, different culture, different teammates, all of it. I wanted to try something else. The reality of it is it's tough being a Canadian, being a foreign guy. If I had stayed at Ospreys, I would have qualified for my British passport and no longer being considered a foreigner, which would have been huge for my career. I still think if I would have stuck with that, I'd be overseas playing in the Prem or whatever league, just because, you know, it is tough to get those spots. But I've been at Ospreys long enough that they valued me for what I was, and then I would have got that passport and the non-foreign thing. But again, it wasn't enough for me to change my decision. I felt confident that I had a strong enough career at Ospreys that I could find a gig. And it just didn't come. Lots of interest. I went around to multiple clubs, toured them, met with the coaches, and then it's just circumstances, man. Like two of them, I was pretty much more or less signed up. An injury happens and they need a foreign player to come fill that spot. And next thing you know, their foreign spots are taken. So it's a fickle world in the rugby contracts. So at the same time, I had done a bunch of holidays down throughout the Mediterranean in my career and stuff, and spent a lot of time sailing and being on the water. And that was something that I very, very much enjoyed, and had made the decision that I would do that at some point in my life. Now, I didn't know it would be particularly that soon, but I went over to Harlequins for kind of a trial month period. Really enjoyed it there, actually, to see a different training environment. I thought it would be pretty cool being in London. The guys were great. I loved the coaching staff. It was a totally different experience. But after 3 weeks there, it still wasn't exactly what I was looking for. My body was tired. I was beat up and sore, and I said, you know what, I can stay here and likely get a 2 or 3 year contract out of them, play till I'm 30. And then at that point, I'd probably be like, what's next type thing. And then I more or less was thinking I'd come home and try to get into the next phase of life. And I said, if I don't do this sailing thing now that I really wanted to do and have that experience, then I don't think I'll ever do it. So I made the decision, told the Harlequins that I appreciate them having me in there, but I'm looking to do something else completely unrelated to rugby. And then actually came back to Canada more or less straight after that, around August time. And then just kind of disconnected from the rugby world. Like I said, I didn't speak to any of the media or anything like that. Hadn't seen my family in a really long time, so I came back to see my parents. My one brother was down in Texas, in Houston, and my younger brother had just finished 2 years of traveling Asia and living in Australia, and he had just come back the night before I did. And I started scheming of how I could go visit my brother in Texas. And I said, I'm just going to road trip and backpack it. That's something that I've really enjoyed doing, is hiking, camping. And I said to my brother, I was like, you ready to start working yet, or you want to join me? And he looks at my dad, and my dad's been telling him to get a job for 2 years. And my dad's like, well, how are you going to do it and whatever. And I said, I figure out all the logistics of it. And I said, you know what, my younger brother's got a chemical engineering degree. I was like, Houston's the place to be for him, but regarding oil and gas, right? And my dad goes, yeah, it's not a bad idea. So we took 2.5 months to road trip down to Texas from Vancouver, lived in a tent for the entire time, and drove an old 96 Cadillac, which is now, I'm pretty sure, stripped for parts somewhere down in Houston. But and then from there, visited them for a bit and just took some time to kind of feel good about my decision. Obviously, there's a lot of things that kind of go through your brain and stuff, but signed up for the course and moved to South Africa for 5.5 months and got my full sailing certificate, and I've used it, and I plan on using it down the line. And it was honestly one of the best decisions I ever made. It was so fun. And then to be able to get myself back into the rugby fold. At the time, I didn't know it was something I necessarily wanted to do, but I was willing to take things as they came. And yeah, no regrets. I had a blast, and it's something that I'll use and appreciate having, and for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it seems, just listening to you, it sounds like there's a bit of a struggle with the decision, but you really seem at peace with what you did, and it's made you, a stronger and better, more well-rounded person at the end of the day, I believe, right? So that's kind of what you hope for anytime you try new adventures.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's kind of the fear of the unknown at that point. Like, knowing what I had on the table, I knew what my contract was. It was my final year of a contract as well. And usually that's, as a 26-year-old, you've been there 5 years, your value goes up, all of those things. So seeing that and making the decision to not only leave that to go somewhere else for potentially less or whatever, that was the first decision. It was being comfortable with, going away from what is comfortable, being at a club that knows your body, knows, your value within the team on and off the pitch, all those things. And then also knowing what your paycheck is and having stability in life in that sense. To go to the unknown is tough. Constantly kind of thinking about, is this the right thing? But as soon as I got away from it and was able to reflect and know that I made the decisions for me, I was super happy with it. I didn't want to play rugby for the wrong reasons. And at that point, if I would have stayed on at Ospreys, it would have been for a paycheck. And at that point, I would have started resenting rugby. I got out and did the things that I wanted to do at the right time, had the opportunity to join up with Seawolves to get myself back on the Canada squad, almost in a very recharged and physically I felt good. I hadn't taken a beating for a year. So I said, if I can make this work and do one more shebang with the boys, whoever retiring after that, it was worth coming back for me. And I mean, whether I'm going to continue playing down the road here, we'll see. But it was good mentally, physically. I had a great time, and it's 100% no regrets. But you're right. It's just when you're sitting there going, is this the right decision? I've got an opportunity to do something that not a lot of people get to. And from them, outsiders looking in, they don't get it. They're like, this guy's crazy. What is he doing? Even my buddies, they're like, oh man, that's a big decision. But then it's amazing to hear some of the, even Canada guys, they're like, man, you've done something that all of us have thought about. Like, we're just kind of stuck on the hamster wheel. It's like, okay, the career's not that long. Let's just milk it while we can. They're like, you got balls to go and do something that you really wanted to do, knowing what you're kind of foregoing, but I made peace with it. And I mean, it didn't take long for me to be like, okay, this is the right decision for sure. The first little bit I battled, but then I'm real happy.
Well, it's nice to hear that your Canadian guys had your back, and I can definitely see why you didn't talk to the press. It's, they would probably pin you as being selfish or something, but it sounds like you really needed a mental health break from the game, and you needed to kind of look after yourself, your body. You had some injuries, and it sounds like it's rejuvenated you as a person, not just as a rugby player, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it led me to the MLR, and then that was a totally different experience as well. Like, not having the extremely high pressures of performance every day. Obviously, you still want to win. There's pressure from, the team and media and stuff, but it is a different environment. It was nice. It was fun to meet new guys that were there. It was a great environment with the guys. And I really enjoyed it. So it kind of, it made rugby fun again. It wasn't just a 9-to-5 job that I'm grinding away in Wales for 11 months of rain. You know what I mean?
Wales is nice for sure, but it's a lot of rain. But you went from Wales to Seattle, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. But I did come off the boat and come into the season in May. And if go to Seattle in May, June, it's very nice. So I showed up, all of that had passed. I was like, what are you guys talking about? This is great.
All right. So you're not my cup of tea, no offense, but apparently you were ranked the 11th hottest rugby player in the world by a UK poll. Do you want to talk to us about that? What does that mean to you? I mean, I know you made that that best 15 of the clubs that did make the quarters for the 2019 World Cup. But this is huge. Like you said, Brad Pitt playing your Netflix movie. What does it mean to you about this?
Oh man, well, I mean, like the 15s part is, I guess that's kind of earned from performance, but I didn't really do anything. And to be honest, it's kind of like, who's the one that are submitting these things? Because I don't know if people know, but like, I don't have teeth.
True.
And I've got a lot of war wounds. I've got crappy hair. I mean, my teammates let me know I got crappy hair anyways. Yeah.
What?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's funny. I've taken a lot more grief from it than I've taken, people praising me for it, because I mean, you know what rugby got like, it's a joke anyways. So it's like, I don't know how it came about. It's funny. Had a bit of media attention from down when I was at Seawolves from it as well. And it's funny. It's, I think actually in the 2015 World Cup, I was like 18th on some lists. So if I do another World Cup, hopefully I'll crack the top 5.
You jumped up 7 spots there. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So maybe next time if somebody interviews you just direct them to your parents or something like that, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I give them credit where credit's due. Like Heather and George Hassler, great folks, both incredibly good-looking people. So I mean, I can't take the credit. It's all their hard work and doing.
How bad do your brothers review about this?
Well, obviously they think it's garbage. Each of them think that I've got 3 brothers. They all think that they're obviously the stud, but to be honest, my oldest brother did do international modeling throughout the world for about 7 years. So I think he can actually claim the title of the best looking hustler. They're saying, well, I'm the best looking hustler. You might be the best looking hustler that plays rugby, which I mean.
Okay. That's fair. So 1A, 1B type thing then maybe. Yeah. All right. Any great rugby stories you can share with us? This one, throw teammates under the bus. It's entirely up to you. It seems like he could pick on Jeb easy or maybe Tyler easy, but I don't know.
Oh man, I could. Yeah, Ty and I have lived together and been best buds since we met in U20s. Like we lived together in Victoria playing sevens before we both signed the same team over in the UK and pretty much just moved together over there. So there's a fair amount of stories there, but there's actually one really good one that I thought of back in 2013, maybe 2014. And I guess in the sake of throwing people under the bus, I can name a few names. I don't think they'll kill me for it, but it was Phil McKenzie's stag weekend down in Vegas. And there was myself, from the Rugby Canada guys, there's myself, his brother Jamie McKenzie, and Nate Hirayama. We were the only 4 that were down there. And the rest, at that point, Phil was playing he was playing for Sale over in Manchester. So a bunch of his buddies from the UK came over, and they'd been playing pro rugby for a little bit. First time in Vegas, they've got a bit of disposable income that they're willing to part with. And then his good group of buddies from Ontario that had come down. So there was quite a mix. There was a few Rugby Canada guys. There was his Sale Sharks guys, and then his kids that he grew up with. And I think there was like 17 of us total. And Jamie McKenzie kind of had full discretion of the weekend plans. And, we did the Vegas thing that you would imagine guys would do at 22, 23. We were at the pool parties and having a good time. But one particular party, we were at the MGM at the pool party there. And we had got one of the big cabanas. And we're in there having a pretty good time, and they're buying the big bottles. I think you can only buy the big bottles there when you're in it's a complete money grab. But I remember this moment like distinctly. The party almost seemed to stop, and we look over, and this group of the biggest men I've ever seen in my entire life walk in. Like enormous. So instantly we're like, these guys got to play in the NFL. Like 100%, these guys got to play in the NFL. And at this point, we'd already been, you know, partying, having a good time for about an hour. So we're well on our way of being obnoxiously social. So they end up parking like 2 tents down from ours. So we end up getting a bit of liquid courage and going over there. And it turns out that it's the Houston Texans offensive line. So it's not even just like, yeah, it's not even just like the average football player. It's like the biggest guys. I don't remember the names of each of them or whatever, but one guy had dreadlocks down the middle of his back and his biceps were bigger than my head, like crazy. So we're over there having a good chat with them, and said to one of the guys, I was like, oh, I used to play football, telling him about, you know, my college time and how I was going to go to potentially try and go to the CFL. And he, you know, super receptive, and they were having a good time. And then I threw out the like, oh, how much you bench, man? And he just goes, more than you. And he goes, how much you bench? And I was like, well, you know, 225 for 10. And he's like, I'll put that up 48 times, buddy. So, and, just kind of shit chatting them too. And I was like, man, it doesn't matter if you can bench. Like I get equipment on with a full head of steam. Like I'm going over top of you. And they're asking us, because at this point now all the other guys have come over and said, well, it's pretty cool. Like we watch you guys all the time and stuff, but we're actually professional rugby players as well, top level in the English Prem and stuff like that. So they were super interested. They're like, man, you guys are crazy. And like, how do you play that sport? And having that kind of interaction with those guys was pretty interesting. And then of course, naturally what we had to do as rugby players is challenge them to a boat race. Yep. So we do it. People were like kind of lining up, like what's going on here? And
did they know what it was?
Pool party, looking over, music pumping. Oh yeah, they knew what it was, but we didn't have beer, so we're doing it with like glasses of. But we lined them up. We said, all right, 4 guys in a row, and 3, 2, 1, let's go. And they destroyed us. I was like, okay, maybe we'll have the advantage of being, you know, rugby guys that do this all the time. No chance. These guys crushed us. And then, of course, we go rematch. So next thing you know, that these guys are like, for sure. And then the next couple of guys on their team jump in. They're like, oh, I want to go. And we ended up hanging out with them for quite a bit. And I think there was kind of like a mutual respect of being athletes and stuff there for a fun weekend, being able to unwind a little bit. And then they said, oh, we're going to this place tomorrow. Like, see you guys there. So we're like, yeah, let's just try and see if we can hang out with these guys a bit more, because it's pretty cool. We end up getting there, and we've got like a little day bed. We couldn't get the night, and they're up on the balcony, and we're like, hey guys, and they're like, yo, you came. Like, it was pretty funny. Then after that, I think the last night we were out taking it a bit easier, just at the casino, and then flew out the next morning, and then flew straight back in, and that was day 1 of Canada camp, and we had to run the beep test, or the yo-yo test this morning. And actually, that was my PB still to this day.
Oh, really?
I was in such like a haze that I was like, just keep going, mind off. And then I think I remember finishing and looking over, and Phil McKenzie's on the ground, like dry heave coughing, and he's like, so worth it. It was worth it. And at the time it was Kieran Crowley, and he's like, you know what, like we've got 3 weeks till our first test. It's his bachelor party. You know, you came in, you ran hard, and he's like, just sort yourself out for tomorrow and we'll get back into it. So he kind of understood the work play aspect of it as well. But that whole kind of weekend leading into a Canada camp was hilarious. Some of the other guys are looking at us like, you guys are ridiculous. Like, how have you managed to even do that? But it was a pretty cool experience.
I can't believe you somewhat challenged one of these guys to a bench press contest.
Or, yeah, we should have got them going, like grab someone from the pool and start pushing them up, or push up contest or something. But we just reverted straight to what could we win, and it was boat race, and we still lost.
All right, Jeff, what's next for you now?
Well, September 3rd, I write my real estate license, and I'm going to to hopefully join up with a brokerage here down in Victoria for commercial real estate. So that's kind of my post-rugby plans. I'm getting on now. I'm not as spry and young as I used to be. So you got to kind of think of the things that come next with rugby. I love it here on the island. I don't have any plans of going back to Alberta or anything like that. So plan on playing maybe 1 or 2 more years in the MLR. Kind of fizzing out. It's a great competition to transition into the next phases of life. So I'm kind of using the 6 months of playing to get my all my eggs in a row, I guess, and make that transition. Whether I play 2 years or 1, not quite sure yet, but definitely look to suit up next year and then start to make that transition to the real world. But it's nice to know that I'm going to be somewhere where I'm excited to be in Victoria, and know that I'm going to be stable there and not jumping around from club to club or not knowing what country you're going to. As great as that experience is, and I had a lot of fun doing it throughout my early 20s and stuff, I'm ready to set some roots. My family's up island here now, 2 hours, so it's great to be near them. And yeah, it's exciting thinking about kind of the next phases. I think by the time I'm 30, I'll be wrapped up and on to the next thing.
Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I had some great laughs and really enjoyed hearing your rugby story and about your life. Thanks very much for joining me on the Canadian Ruck.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And if you ever want to do a tandem with another guy or something, I'm sure we could sort that out. And I'd love to jump back on another time and just talk rugby. It doesn't have to be about me or the background or whatever, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and thanks again.
Cheers.
That was great. Thanks, Jeff. That was a lot of fun chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit better as your thoughts as to playing and your thoughts on who you are as a person. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And I think we're going to have Jeff on again on a round table with Ardrin and a couple of his old Ospreys buddies. So that will be coming up, and that's going to be a lot of fun too. Saying that, we've got a few great guests coming up soon. We've got Ray Barkwell. His video, we recorded him about 2 weeks ago, so he's sitting in queue and he'll be coming up next. And then Nadia Popov, again, I've got her conversation recorded, and she'll be coming up after Ray. Then after Nadia is Mark Wyatt. And I chatted with Mark yesterday, and we must have chatted for 2 hours. The video, the pod with Mark's only about an hour and 15, but it was pretty cool because the start of it was him kind of interviewing me and, why did you get into this? And that's cool. And it was really neat to get that sense from an ex-amazing rugby player and still a truly great guy. He just felt so honored and blessed that the Canadian Ruck and viewers wanted to hear from him. And it was nice to see that. He was very, very humble. And I guess a true steward of the game, and you'll enjoy his conversation as you will of Nadia's and as you will of Ray's. Shortly up, we have Hubert Bynes. I'll be chatting with Hubert hopefully next week. He's away on vacation right now. And then I'm getting Brett Bukaboom lined up as well, which will be fun. Love his name. It's one of the best rugby names you can have for sure. All right, so massive thank you, as always, to our essential workers, support staffs, volunteers, support staffs for sure. The professional sports here in North America are starting up, sort of. The NHL playoffs start today, which will be really cool. Basketball is in full swing down in Florida. National Hockey League, it's kind of neat. They get 2 host cities, Edmonton and Toronto. Baseball, I have no clue what they're doing. They're just playing home games, and there's more and more people getting sick, and they continue to try and do their own thing, which is weird. Schools will be starting back up in the fall. We're hoping that they're going to be as safe as possible for the students, for the staff, for the faculty, for everybody, the custodians, everybody there. So we got to continue being vigilant in battling with the COVID. As always, thanks to Ben Sound Music for supplying with our opening and closing tunes. And gray area this week is reach out to me with your top 2 or 3 laws that you would like to see implemented or changed. So with that, always feel free to request topics for future podcasts. I've had a few people reach out asking for guests, and I'm doing my best to get them on. But until next time, until we get Ray Barkwell on, this is Jamie stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and I'm losing it, and keep on rocking.